Hello, this is Karie Bible, tour guide at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and welcome to yet another week of Tour Talk. First off, for those asking, I didn't cut my hair. This is a faux bob from the 1920s style, so that's what's going on with the hair. The update on Close Up. Yes, Close Up did the cutest thing I've ever seen last weekend. After the tour was over, I gave him a meal of salmon, which seems to be his favorite. Gave him a bunch of treats, scratched his head, petted him, and he walked over to a patch of grass. He laid on his back and he put all four legs right up in the air and then kind of did his paws like this, shut his eyes, and just went to sleep and took a nap. And it was the cutest thing I've ever seen. It's just when I think that cat could not be cuter and more charming, he finds a way to be cuter and more charming. So he's my little buddy. And the tours are going well so far. I was doing private tours in June. I am now back to doing public tours in July. And knock on wood here on the desk, it's been going really well. I've kept the groups very small. Everybody's worn a mask. Everybody's social distant. Everybody's behaved themselves and been respectful of the health of others. So I'm extremely grateful for that. So thank you to everybody who's taken the tour and been a really great guest. Now, we've talked recently about some pretty big stars like Peter Lorre and Tyrone Power. I wanted to circle back this week and talk about an obscure star, because talking about some of the obscure stars is really something I'm very interested in. And Barbara La Marr is an obscure star, but really doesn't deserve to be. There's probably a lot of reasons for this. As I've mentioned in previous vlog, that a lot of silent films, in fact, roughly, I think about 80-something%, no longer survive. And there's a variety of reasons for this. Sometimes they were just flat out burned for the silver. Other times they were put in a vault, and the vault caught fire and destroyed a lot of the prints. Sometimes they were just kind of purposely set on fire. There's all sorts of reasons why this happened, but it's very frustrating when you study this stuff and you live for this stuff and you're trying to maybe assess the artistic trajectory of a particular actor, actress, filmmaker, etc., and there's not much to see. And that's very frustrating. And unfortunately, Barbara La Marr suffers from that problem. A lot of her films are lost. There are a handful out there, but again, there's not a lot. So it's kind of hard to, there's not a lot to go on. But Barbara La Marr has one of the most fascinating personal lives you are ever going to come across. She was born in Yakima, Washington, and when she was a teenager, she ran away and worked as an exotic dancer in a nightclub and got into trouble for underage dancing, and she was sent back home, and she was a very artistic woman, a very sensitive woman, a very rebellious woman, and she eventually came to Hollywood and worked as an actress. And she was, again, a really just a complicated, fascinating person. She was a writer at first, and Mary Pickford saw her and said, "You are far too beautiful to just be a writer. You should be an actress." So Barbara La Marr co-starred with Douglas Fairbanks in the silent film The Nut, and she was the Countess Lady de Winter opposite Doug Fairbanks in the silent version of The Three Musketeers. Both of those, I believe, are on DVD. And anyway, Barbara was also a producer. So she's a writer, she was a producer, but the studio really didn't want their vamps to be intellectual types or entrepreneurs, excuse me. So they kind of encouraged Barbara La Marr to kind of stick to the vamp image. And she had the misfortune of perpetually marrying the wrong men. She was married 5 different times in her life. She had one son that was a secret child that she never named the father, and she went off to Texas, put him in an orphanage, and then adopted him. I was lucky enough to get to meet that child. His name was Don Gallery, and he was a sweet, loving, kind man. He was great, and he passed away a few years ago. And Barbara La Marr sort of had this live fast, die young, presumably leave a good-looking corpse credo. She was quoted once as saying, I like my men like I like my roses by the dozen. I only sleep a few hours a night. I have better things to do. So she was a wild lady. She liked dancing, she liked drinking, she liked men, and she kind of lived a lot in her mere 29 years. Yes, she died at age 29 in 1926, and she died a few months before Valentino. So 1926 was definitely a very, very bad year for silent film star deaths. And my friend Sherry Snyder has written the definitive biography of Barbara La Marr. It's called Barbara La Marr, The Girl Who Was Too Beautiful for Hollywood. And I highly, highly recommend this book. And I'll tell you the backstory on this book. A long time ago, there was a man who was producing a living history show at a cemetery in Pasadena. And Barbara La Marr was originally interred in Pasadena before she was moved to Hollywood forever. Well, at the time called Hollywood Memorial Park. So the man who was directing the show in Pasadena called me, and we were talking. And he said, Karie, I need an actress to play Barbara La Marr. Do you know of anybody? Well, Sherry Snyder and I used to model together for this company called Vamp Vintage. And I looked down at my keyboard, and there was Sherry's business card sitting on the top of my keyboard. And Sherry was in a 1920s evening gown, posing and looking just like Barbara La Marr. And I go, well, the perfect person. I know the perfect person for this, and that's Sherry Snyder. So Sherry met with this director. She wound up writing and starring in a one-woman show for his theater company as Barbara La Marr. She's performed this show for the Art Deco Society of Los Angeles and several other places. She wrote this definitive biography on Barbara La Marr, which is fantastic. It's a real page turner. It's beautifully written. Sherry took 10 years to research and write this book. And also, Sherry really became very close to Barbara's son, Don. And Don was very, very young when he lost his mother. Again, she was only 29 when she died. And Sherry said that the very first time she ever performed as Barbara La Marr, she heard in advance that Don, Barbara's son, was going to be in the audience. And Sherry said that she couldn't look at him until the performance was over. And she said when she did look at him, he just had tears pouring down his face. And at one point, Don needed to have an operation, and he didn't want to do it. And Sherry got very close to Don and his wife. And Don's wife called Sherry and said, Sherry, can you talk to Don? He really needs to go have this surgery. So Sherry talked to Don and got him to agree to do it, and even drove him around Los Angeles and took care of him during the week of his surgery. So it's almost like Barbara went through me to get to Sherry, so Sherry could take care of Don. And it's kind of like Sherry's given us a great gift, not only in telling this incredible story of Barbara La Marr's life, but also she gave Don back his mom. I mean, she really was like a mother-son relationship, even though, of course, they're multiple decades apart. And I think Sherry had a very special bond with Don, and he wanted to see this book completed. Sadly, he died before it was released, but he knew it was coming. He knew it was going to be done, and it was going to be done beautifully. And he did get to know that before leaving this world. And I think Barbara's kind of misunderstood a lot. And, she's someone that, again, a lot of people don't know. There's not exactly a ton of films out there to see, but she's just such a complicated and interesting and unique person. And I think biographies can be tricky because you really have to cut to the quick of who that person was, what made them tick, and why. And that isn't easy to do. I've read a lot of biographies, and I can tell you it's not easy to do from many of that I've read. But Sherry did that. Sherry got under Barbara's skin, and Sherry got to the truth of Barbara's work as an artist and her life here on Earth. So I very, very highly recommend this book to you. Again, if they have it, call Larry Edmonds and see if they have it, and see if they don't have it, perhaps they can order it for you, which I would definitely encourage you to do. And I think the movie, The Three Musketeers, The Nut, and I know Souls for Sale is available on Warner Archive, and Barbara does have a supporting role in Souls for Sale. So that's another film that you can see. But again, Barbara is just, again, she's not well known, but she should be, because she's absolutely worth getting to know. So that kind of concludes this week's Tour Talk. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you can read this book and learn all about Barbara's intriguing life. And I hope you'll keep tuning in with me every week as I discuss more of the incredible stars, artists, pioneers, and trailblazers interred at Hollywood Forever.